In the previous lectures, we've kind of set up our question and thought about some potential responses um, in terms of where intuition um, fits within how we do ethics most generally, what role it's meant to be playing, and how we might be able to trust our intuitions if we think that Moore's understanding of moral intuitionism, easy for me to say, is correct. So for this next two lectures, we're going to turn on to some more negative arguments. So thinking about ways in which we might challenge the primacy of intuition and thinking about how we could try and undermine the reliability of our moral intuitions. So we've all said that we've understood that we all have moral intuitions. We have strong moral intuitions that stem from our encounters with moral phenomena in the world. So to begin with, I want you to consider this example. So consider the example of someone who's raised in a very religious household. So um, we're going to assume that this is somebody who doesn't have much exposure to the outside world, and they've been told since the day that they were born certain facts about the way that the world works. So they were told that praising God is of supreme ethical importance, and anyone who doesn't follow the word of God is a sinner, and they go to hell. And so it will not be surprising to us then if this person who is raised in this environment would have quite distinctive moral intuitions. So, for example, we should expect them, when presented with a case of somebody who's going against the word of the Bible, um, and yeah, going against the teachings that they have been taught, we expect their moral intuitions to condemn that person very harshly. They'd have a very negative moral intuition towards that circumstance. And yet, most non-religious people would not think that this is something that's so direly ethically wrong. And so it seems like many of us would think that the moral intuitions of the person who is raised in a heavily religious household might have unreliable moral intuitions. And this is because we can explain where their intuitions come from pretty straightforwardly. So it seems like their intuitions aren't likely to be their intuitions are likely to be simply reflecting the environment that they were brought up in. They're reflecting what they've been told since birth. And it doesn't seem like we have to assume, independently at least, that these intuitions are going to be something that is tracking onto the moral truth. So people might think that there are strong arguments for why Christian ethics are the true ethics, but it doesn't seem like we can infer that simply from the fact that this person has these intuitions. Instead, these intuitions seem to be um, simply reflecting the upbringing and culture of this person pretty straightforwardly. And so, for that reason, they seem to be unreliable in a way that we might think that a lot of other intuitions might not be. Um, However, there's a problem here. So, when we kind of zoom out, we might think that there's a worry that all of us are actually in a similar situation, even if we might not want to admit it, where our intuitions instead reflect our own community or environment. So, if we think about, why we have the intuitions we have, um, there's a worry here that our intuitions aren't actually going to be tracking onto the moral truth in a way that we want them to be if we're going to trust them and if they're going to be reliable. Instead, they're just parroting back to us ethical lessons that we've internalized. These are not kind of things that are independently accessing some moral truth in the way that maybe Moore was suggesting. Instead, our intuition is just reflecting our own understandings back at us. And so we might worry that this isn't something that's to be verified. But maybe that's not something that we should be so worried about, at least independently, because if it turned out that we all had similar moral intuitions, even if they were reflecting our culture, we might think that well, those could still be reliable because maybe our culture's kind of got it right. Maybe we've some ethical arguments have been had, a long time ago, and we found the correct moral worldview, the correct moral understanding, and our intuitions are just reflections of that being internalized over the course of generations.